Okay, I look crazy because of the light and also just my face, but welcome to another video. Today we're reading new or new-ish releases, and I am filming the intro as I've just read the last book, and I can tell you what, not even I could predict what I feel with these books, so let's just jump straight in.
Drawing out the word and arching a brow. He hummed.
So I've been listening to Cage a Wild Bird by Brooke Fast. I am currently sitting at about chapter 12. I wanted to jump in and tell you the premise of this book because I feel like anything that I talk about going forward could potentially be a spoiler, so I don't want to spoil it for anyone. So To Cage a Wild Bird follows Raven. She's our main female character. She lives in this city called Davidium, and Davidium is a city in a world that has been ravaged by nuclear war. So there's not a lot of resources around. The soil's contaminated, so things don't grow. And so the Davidium's been divided into three sort of sections or categories, and the lower section is the poorest, where Raven is from. And in this particular world, any crime is punished by being sent to prison. There's no like court case leading up to a sentence. You essentially are just chucked straight into this prison, and this prison is almost like I don't know what you would call it, like a attraction to the rich and wealthy where they can pay to hunt the inmates. So we meet Raven at the start. She's a bounty hunter, and she will basically hand people over to the authorities to be sent to Deadlock for money. It's obviously a bounty hunter. That's the same in every world, I feel, but that is her job. And she has been doing this to look after her and her brother from a young age because they lost their parents due to them being sent to Deadlock prison. So her parents were a part of this rebel group, and her younger brother is trying to join this rebel group, but because of what Raven does, she doesn't want to really associate with them and is almost looked at as being on the other side or the wrong side because she sends people to Davidium. Being a bounty hunter, it looks like she's working for the government. So her brother ends up getting arrested and put into the prison, Deadlock. So she gets herself arrested just so that she can get in there and try to help get her brother out. And because she's a bounty hunter, a lot of the people that she has sent to prison have, realized that she's there and have made her a target. So the way they sort of navigate or survive this particular prison is every time they go on a hunt, they get points if they don't die, obviously. And the more points you have, the more privilege you've got around the prison, as well as I think the higher the price for people to pay to hunt you. So she was starting to sort of try and stay a low profile, but due to the fact that she is a bounty hunter and she's sent quite a lot of people there, she's got a lot of enemies in there. And then she's also trying to scope out this prison so she can, one, find her brother, and two, get them both out. So that's kind of where I'm at now. She's just gotten herself arrested, put in prison. She's in her first sort of, death match or whatever you'd want to call it, hunt. And she's just managed to find her brother. So yeah, she's just trying to scope out the location to see if there's any weaknesses in order to get her and her brother out. Yeah, it's so far, I'm having a really good time with it actually. Like the narration only has one narrator, so it's not like dual narration or dual POV or anything like that, but she's doing a really, really good job. I don't actually know, I should look up her name. Is it going to tell me? Narrated by Nikki Massad. So yeah, Nikki Massad is doing a fantastic job with the narration. She's not the best, I've heard, like when it comes to doing like multiple character voices, but still very engaging, and it's obvious when she's being other people. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's going to be pretty high up there in the ratings. So I don't know. I don't think this is a standalone, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure what the situation is with this book, but I will check back in if there's anything I want to talk about. Otherwise, I will see you when I'm finished listening to this book to give you my final thoughts. Alright guys, I wanted to jump on and say that I finished To Cage a Wild Bird by Brooke Fast, and that book I'm giving 4 stars. It's so much fun. It was a really quick, I did listen to the audio, but I feel like it was a really quick listen. Like it was just, I don't know how to explain it without making it almost sound like it wasn't a good book, but it was a good book. But it was so easy to follow because it was a dystopian that was set in this world, like the real world, and it's post a nuclear war. So while the world itself has changed a bit, we're not introducing any like powers or abilities or anything. It is just a dystopian world set in a, you know, indeterminate amount of time in the future, where society has, you know, started to live again after a nuclear war, and one society, which is where we're set in Davidium, has divided its people up into 3, and the poorer sections are obviously always the ones that seem to suffer, not just because they're poor, but because the rich will always try and strangle and keep all the resources. And this is something that we see even now, and the fact that it is so set in, it is set so close to our own reality that it is so easy to follow. And then the POV's only in our MMC's like head. So we follow Raven the entire way through the book. We don't get multiple POVs. So you know what she knows. So the world building isn't extensive because her experience in this world has only been in this one small area of the world. And so she only knows this little bit of the world. So that's all you ever sort of learn. So it is easy to follow along, and it doesn't try to over explain the world. Like the world just is, and that's the world that she knows. So that's what you sort of get. So in that aspect, it is really easy to follow along. You don't need to have to concentrate so much just to figure out this world. And then the book is set predominantly in Endlock, this prison. So you're again in an isolated setting where she's learning the rules of this prison. So you're learning with her. And so, yeah, it just makes it really easy to sort of follow along. Almost, not to say in a bad way, but yeah, you don't need to bring a lot of mental energy into that book. Yeah, 4 stars for that one. I definitely cannot wait to see where the book goes and how it sort of evolves and how the world sort of expands. But yeah, definitely worth the read or the listen. Yeah, actually that's it. That's all I've got. So definitely check that one out. I am currently in the middle of listening to Lawmaker by Susie Tate. There's just something about Susie Tate's writing that I absolutely love. It like hits every single time. If you're into like emotional damage and contemporary romance, she's definitely someone you need to pick up. Her books do follow a very similar sort of, I don't know, pattern or storyline. So you do sort of know going in, once you've read a Susie Tate book, you sort of know what they're all about because they all do follow the same sort of pattern. But I don't know, there's just something in her writing and they just hit every single time. So when I'm in the mood for some emotional damage, I always go for a Susie Tate because I know it's gonna be amazing. So you do have to check your triggers for this. She does pick quite a lot of deep topics that could be triggering to a lot of people to focus her stories on, and this one has a lot of domestic violence in it. So yeah, be careful reading her books, but they are just amazing. And Lawmaker, which is what I'm currently listening to, which is a duet, and it's the performances, it's amazing. I'm just having a great time. I feel like it's March now when I'm filming this currently, but it's the first book of the year that I don't want to put down. Like, I think about it when I'm not reading it, and I can't wait to get back to it. And while I've read some great books and books that I've loved, yeah, I haven't had that feeling of like, I really just want to know what's going to happen next and just want to keep going until I get to the end. So it's been really, really good to have that feeling, and I'm just really enjoying my time with this book. Will it mean that this book will be a god tier for me? Maybe not, but it's definitely one that I would recommend if you like that sort of contemporary romance. But so far we're following Rafe and Clara. Clara is a teaching assistant. She's a very shy and very reserved person, so she really doesn't communicate with adults very well. And we learn quite early on that she is being abused, and she comes from an abusive family, and she teaches Ozzy, who is one of the kids in this class who is dyslexic, and the school that she works at is a very prestigious school, and it's set in England, so there's quite a lot of royal adjacent people that go to this school. So the father of Ozzy is Lord Sterling, who is Rafe, who is our MMC, and his son has been going home and raving about Clara and how Clara has been helping him because his son is dyslexic. So he wants to meet Clara, but Clara has, because of her shyness and her family history, has in her contract that she doesn't have to meet the parents. And Rafe, being a lord and getting, his way all the time, he basically barges his way into this classroom to meet her, and eventually hires her as a tutor for Oz. So that's how they sort of meet. And then Rafe is also a barrister, or working towards becoming a barrister in his profession. And so that sort of ties them together too, unknowingly. Obviously, as the reader, we know that, but they don't know that. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Rafe has sort of moved Clara into his house because he has seen where she's living and the situation that she's got going on, but he doesn't know anything about her or her family or her family's history yet. He just knows that she lives in this really unsafe part of town, and despite working at this prestigious school, doesn't really earn enough to sort of have safe lodging. So he's moved her into the house, and they're just sort of starting their relationship beyond, employer and employee. So yeah, I am excited to see where this goes. I can't wait to get back into it. So I will check back in at the end when I've finished, because I feel like I'm just going to speed through the rest of this book and let you know my final thoughts, but it's at least going to be a 4-star. I can't see why it wouldn't be a 5-star, but yeah, it's right up there and I'm loving it. And I'm definitely thinking, unless something goes really, really wrong at the end, which I doubt, you should read this book. But I will check back in and give you final thoughts at the end. Alright guys, it is the next day. I am wearing the same outfit, but I have finished Lawmaker by Susie Tate. 5 stars. I loved it. There's just something, like I said before, there's just something about her writing. And when that's what I want to read, it hits every single time. So yeah, I've got minor complaint, but 5 stars either way. But there is something that Susie Tate does. Her stories do follow, like I said, a certain pattern. And, generally it involves a man groveling, which we love. We love when a man grovels. But sometimes it does drag on a little bit at the end. Like, I feel like, and maybe that's just me, but once everything's sort of come to a head and we've got a conclusion and they're sort of making up, once the groveling's done, let's just get a move on, Like, it's a foregone conclusion. it's a romance. We know what's going to happen. So we don't need to drag it out like will they, won't they, because we know they will. That's why we're there. So she does sometimes have her FMCs sort of drag it out a little bit at the end. And I'm all for like making a man grovel and wait for a while, but also kind of just let's go. I will say there is an epilogue in Lawmaker, but it is one of those epilogues that you want to read. It's not, in my opinion anyway, obviously, but you know, sometimes when an epilogue is just, you know, 5 years later and they've got kids, I'm like, that's boring. I don't want to see that. Like, give me something. So this does have an epilogue, but it's not that far forward in the future, and it is just a fun little snippet to have. It's not, you know, over the top. It's not so far in the future. It's just, yeah, it's a good time. And if you have read, I don't know what the series is called, but you do sort of get a tiny, not to the point where you would have to read anything else first, but a tiny little crossover from her other series. I can't remember what it's called, but I think the books are Outlier and Daydream and one other one. But there's a trilogy there with that does have a little bit of a crossover. We do see some of the characters and they do mention them. They're not really in the book, but they do get mentioned. But yeah, not that you would need to read any of the other books either. Like, these are standalones. You don't even need to necessarily read them in order, but obviously the series follow people that are interconnected. So you do get the best story by reading them in order. But for this one, it's completely different characters. You don't need to have read anything else. I don't think it would change anything about the story. They're not in the story per se, like they don't actually have a voice in this story. Their names are just mentioned. So yeah, 5 stars. I've got nothing more to say. I loved it. So I've sat down and I'm just about to start King of Ravens by Claire Sager. This one I'm so excited for. Basically it says he'll do anything to keep her, she'll do anything to escape. Sounds so much fun. And I've heard a lot of people really enjoy this one. So yeah, I did accidentally bust it up a little bit, just putting it in the bag. But anyway, hopefully it'll flatten out once it's on the shelf. But this one's a fairly decent sized book. We've got about 470 pages, just under. But it is a fairly decent sized writing. So hopefully it should be good. But yeah, I'm going to jump straight into this. I've got some TV going. There's definitely content warnings. But yeah, this one I'm excited to start. It's not very floppy. Like, it's a little bit floppy, but not too... Hopefully I don't crack the spine. But anyway, if we do, we do. Okay guys, I have been reading for a little bit of King of Ravens, and I'm up to 118 pages, which is chapter 15, and so far it's fine. It hasn't really gripped me yet. The whole premise of the book so far is that our FMC Rhiannon, her parents have bargained her away essentially to be married off to one of the kings of the underworld, and so he's just sort of come to collect her at the start of the book, and she is really unsure of this world. So it's like a fae world, the underworld, and so there are a lot of rules and things with the fae, and she, obviously being raised human and being human, doesn't really understand the world. So yeah, she's off to a rocky start with these people, but that's pretty much as far as the story has gone in the sense of what the story is about. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's definitely, obviously, because it is an underworld, so that's where I'm getting a lot of the Hades and Persephone vibes. And I have some theories about how this book is going to go, but I don't want to really say too much in case it's a spoiler. But yeah, they're mentioning a lot about her gardening, and there's a lot of seeing her garden. So obviously that's giving a lot of Persephone vibes. But yeah, it's okay so far. Like I said, it hasn't really gripped me yet, so I'm hoping that something more exciting happens later in the book. But so far, it's like sitting at a 3-star read for me, which is a bit disappointing because I thought this would be a little bit more darker and grittier, but yeah, it just hasn't quite got there yet, but we shall see. I'm going to continue reading, and I might check in with you guys when I'm about halfway. We'll see. Otherwise, I might just jump in at the end. I suppose it depends what happens, but yeah. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next clip, I guess. Alright guys, I can't remember the last time I jumped in and spoke to you, but I just wanted to give you a quick little update on my thoughts now that I'm about halfway through King of Ravens. If you can hear anything in the background, that is my washing machine. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get my washing done, and I feel like it's the loudest my washing machine has ever been. But so I'm about halfway in, and honestly there's not a whole lot going on in this book. Like the story itself is fine, but it's just, yeah, I don't know, like nothing is happening. So we had our main character Rhiannon, she's pulled from the human world, and in this world you sort of know about the Fae and everything, so it's not like it's completely unknown to her, but she's been pulled into the underworld because her parents have made a deal with the Morrigan, and her son is to marry her essentially, and that is the premise of the entire book. She's been dragged into the underworld. It's giving very much Hades and Persephone vibes. And the King of Death, which is our MMC, he has pretty much said you need to fall in line. There are rules down here, and these rules dictate, you know, his reign down there, the amount of power he has, and just, you know, ways to keep her safe essentially. And so she's trying to learn all these particular rules that these people live by, but essentially she just wants to go home. So she's trying to escape and get home. So the king offers her a bargain and says if you can get through the labyrinth, it'll take you to a door to get home. So now there's this random labyrinth in here that she's trying to get through. So she gets whisked via, like, I don't know, ravens, something, magic, into this labyrinth to try and get through the labyrinth during the day, and then at night she's whisked back to the castle to do her queenly duties during the night because they're nocturnal. And then, yeah, every time she gets pulled out of the maze, she gets dropped back in where she sort of finished up. So there are like 6 levels to this particular labyrinth that she has to try and get through with like all these trials and things. And so far she's gotten through 1 level at the halfway point, and she's sort of learning how to navigate the underworld as well at the same time. And while that sounds like there's a lot going on, that's about it. Like there's no stakes really outside of her just wanting to get home. They barely interact together, so any kind of like interaction they have is short and uneventful. Like there's no tension between them. There's no chemistry between them. I feel like they're strangers, and it reads like they're strangers. So if they want to progress the relationship, and I mean, we're already halfway through. I don't know if this is going to be a continuing series, but I feel like something should have happened. We should have had at least some interaction, good or bad. But yeah, there's very little. They're hardly in each other's presence. And when they are, it's kind of like very much like strangers, which they are, but yeah, there's just no chemistry that I see in these 2 characters. So I have suspicions on what I think there is sort of like going on in the background. There is a little bit of a story, but I don't want to say anything because I don't want to sort of like ruin it, but there is a reason she wants to get home, and I don't understand why, because for all intents and purposes, she was sold by her family to keep themselves safe. And then they pretty much have trapped her in her home because she's there's like chronic illness in here, so she is actually chronically ill. And yeah, pretty much they said to her, don't have any hope that you're going to get any better, because they already knew that they'd pretty much sold her and they were just trying to hide her from the bargain that they made. So yeah, I don't know, like it's fine. Alright guys, I've officially finished King of Ravens by Claire Sager, and I was tossing up between a 2 and a 3 star, and I think I'm going to go a 2 star because I feel like I've given some 3 stars to books that I like more than this one. This is just a miss for me, and I'm really sad about it because who doesn't love a Hades and Persephone sort of retelling where the FMC gets dragged into the underworld? I don't know how you can make that boring, but apparently you can. I was so excited because the FMC in this is in her 30s. I'm like, finally, I'm not reading about a 19-year-old who's going to get married to this like ancient like being. But no, she was just like a doormat the entire time, which kind of annoyed me. And then, you know, she's like, oh, I'm human, I'm weak, I'm meh. Like, God, just shut up. Anyway, so it was just boring. It was a little bit, not even a little bit, like a lot predictable. You could tell from the first few chapters what was going on. And it was just really, really frustrating because then you were reading this boring story knowing exactly what was coming. And still I read all the way through it thinking it was going to get better. And I figured this was a part of a series, but it got to the last little bit where I'm like, you know what, this could actually end up, you know, almost at a 3 star if it was just rounded out and finished. But no, towards the end, I saw where the direction was going and it made me hate the book a little bit. And this is all in the last like 5 pages. The direction that it went, I'm like, instantly, I hate this, instantly no. And then the only thing that has made me not DNF it, even at like 99%, was literally the last sentence. It was interesting enough and literally probably the only thing that I found interesting, which is annoying. But by the time the next book comes out, because right now I would be interested to see how the next book starts, whether or not I would DNF if it keeps going in the way that the last few pages sort of showed that it was going. But yeah, that would make me DNF the next book because I hate that. And doing what it did in the last few pages makes me want to throw this entire book in the trash. But anyway, that's a little bit harsh, but it's also true. So yeah, 2 stars. If by the time the next one comes out, I haven't completely forgotten this book, then I will probably pick it up, maybe. Probably not a physical copy because this is not something I will ever go back to reread. And then if by the time the next one comes out and I can't remember this, I'll remember that I disliked it and won't want to pick it up to reread. So it won't make a difference. I'll just not bother with the next book. But yeah, so not the best way to end the vlog, but that is just how I feel. Also, like, obviously, this is just my opinion. So if you want to read it, check it out. Maybe you won't feel the same as I do. I just thought there was like literally nothing going on. You would think as soon as the FMC is dragged to hell, the story would get interesting, but it just was mid the entire way. Like, nothing happened. And then there was this random labyrinth bit going on. Still boring. Still nothing happening. It was literally scene after scene of the same thing repeated ad nauseum. But anyway, I'm going to finish talking about this book because otherwise I'm going to sit here and be as boring as that book. But that is it for... So that is it for this video. Hopefully the books that you're reading are better than the experience I just had. Please don't let my dislike of a book ever make you feel like you can't read it, because books are subjective and it's just my opinion. So you may love it. And hopefully if you're in possession of this book and you do read it, you do love it, because I would never wish a bad book on anyone. With that said, I will catch you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for being here. Have a good time, and wherever you are, I hope you're reading a 5-star. Bye.